Commander Jake Morrison stood at the podium in the Great Hall of Kepler Station and looked out at the assembled alien delegates. The massive chamber stretched before him like a cathedral of metal and glass, filled with beings from across the galaxy. Dr. Lisa Carter sat behind him at the human delegation table, her hands folded calmly as she watched the proceedings. They had come here with hope, carrying humanity's formal application for full membership in the Galactic Council after 50 years of probationary status. The Zephyrian Chancellor Veltar rose from his elevated seat, his crystalline form catching the light as he moved. His voice echoed through the chamber with barely concealed contempt when he spoke. The human petition has been reviewed by this council, and we find it lacking in merit. Your species continues to demonstrate the primitive, warlike tendencies that have plagued your short history. Your technology remains laughably inferior to established galactic standards, and your military consists of barely evolved creatures wielding weapons they barely understand. Captain Ben Hughes watched from the gallery section reserved for military observers. His jaw tightened as he listened to the Chancellor's words, but he remained silent. Around him, other human officers and diplomats maintained their composure despite the insults being hurled at their species. The Altarian High Magistrate, Kolvesh, stood next, his tall gray form towering over the assembly. We have observed human behavior for decades and find them unsuitable for full membership privileges. They wage war with disturbing frequency and show little capacity for the refined diplomatic arts required of advanced civilizations. Their contributions to galactic society remain minimal at best. Dr. Carter leaned forward slightly and whispered something to Morrison. He nodded and returned his attention to the proceedings. The insults continued to flow from the assembled delegates like a river of contempt. The hegemony representative, a bulky creature with multiple arms, gestured dismissively toward the human delegation. Humans serve best as laborers and miners. Their strong backs and simple minds make them ideal for the manual work that more advanced species find beneath their station. They should accept their proper place in the galactic hierarchy and cease these foolish attempts at elevation. A low murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. The crystalline collective spokesperson, a being of pure energy contained within a geometric frame, pulsed with what Morrison recognized as amusement. Perhaps humans could focus on agriculture as well. Their primitive understanding of biology might serve some purpose in feeding more advanced civilizations. Morrison felt the weight of every insult, but his expression never changed. He had expected this outcome, but hoped for better. Behind him, Dr. Carter made notes on her datapad with steady hands. She had been through diplomatic humiliations before and knew how to maintain professional dignity. The Nexus Trade Federation delegate chimed in with his own assessment. Human merchants lack the sophistication required for complex interstellar commerce. Their negotiation skills are crude, and their understanding of galactic economics is remedial at best. They would be better served learning from their betters, rather than attempting to compete as equals. Chancellor Veltar called for the formal vote. One by one, each delegation cast the rejection of humanity's petition. The tally was unanimous. Not a single alien civilization spoke in favor of granting humans full membership status. When the voting concluded, Veltar addressed Morrison directly. Commander Morrison, the Galactic Council has spoken with one voice. Humanity's petition for full membership is denied. Your species may continue to serve in its current probationary capacity, providing labor and basic services as required by superior civilizations. We suggest you focus on improving your primitive culture before attempting such presumption again. Morrison stood slowly and walked to the speaker's podium. The chamber fell silent as hundreds of alien eyes focused on him. When he spoke, his voice was calm and measured. Honorable delegates, we have heard your decision and understand your position regarding humanity's place in galactic society. We accept your judgment and will not contest this ruling." The alien seemed surprised by his composed response. Many had expected anger or desperate pleading. Instead, Morrison continued with the same steady tone. "Humanity came to this council in good faith, hoping to contribute more fully to galactic civilization. We believed our 50 years of service had demonstrated our value as partners rather than servants. We were mistaken in this belief." Dr. Carter rose from her seat and joined Morrison at the podium. She activated her communication device and spoke clearly into it. "Earth Command, this is Dr. Carter reporting from Kepler Station. The Council has rendered its decision. Humanity's petition has been rejected unanimously. The delegates have made their position regarding our species quite clear. Please initiate Protocol Exodus immediately." The alien delegates stirred uneasily at her words. Protocol Exodus was not a term they recognized, and the calm efficiency with which the humans were responding was unexpected. Morrison nodded to Carter and then addressed the Council one final time. "We thank the Council for clarifying humanity's position in galactic society. Your wisdom in this matter will not be forgotten. We will consider our options and respond accordingly. Good day, honorable delegates." The human delegation gathered their materials and walked calmly toward the exit. No angry words were spoken, no threats were made, no dramatic gestures were performed. They simply left with the same dignity they had maintained throughout the humiliating proceedings. Captain Hughes followed the delegation out of the chamber, along with the other human observers. In the corridor outside, Morrison turned to face his people. His voice remained steady when he spoke. "Signal all human vessels and installations. Begin immediate preparation for total withdrawal from galactic space. All diplomatic missions are to be recalled. All trade agreements are to be concluded or transferred. All military advisors are to be reassigned to human operations only." Dr. Carter was already coordinating with Earth Command through her secure communication link. Protocol Exodus is now active. Estimated timeline for complete withdrawal is 36 months. All human citizens in alien space are to be given priority transport back to human territories. No exceptions. Hughes stepped forward and saluted. "Sir, what about our ongoing military cooperation agreements? We have advisors with 12 different alien fleets and strategic partnerships with 6 major defense organizations." Morrison looked at him with something that might have been sadness in his eyes. "Captain, we have been told quite clearly what our place is in this galaxy. We are laborers and miners, nothing more. Military partnership requires equality, and we have been informed that we are not equals. Withdraw our people immediately." The group moved through the station corridors toward the docking bays, where human vessels waited. Around them, alien workers and tourists went about their business, unaware that they had just witnessed a turning point in galactic history. As the human ships prepared to depart Kepler Station, Morrison stood on the bridge of his vessel and looked back at the massive structure. Somewhere inside, the Galactic Council was probably celebrating their successful rejection of human presumption. They had no idea what they had just set in motion. Dr. Carter joined him at the observation window. "Do you think they understand what they've done?" she asked quietly. Morrison shook his head slowly. "No, Lisa. They see us as primitive creatures who are put in their proper place. They have no concept of what humanity is truly capable of when we stop trying to fit into someone else's vision of civilization." The human fleet departed Kepler Station in perfect formation, leaving behind 50 years of attempted integration with galactic society. Behind them, the aliens continued their celebrations, confident that they had made the right decision in keeping humanity in its subordinate position. They would learn otherwise, but not for many years to come. Colonel Amy Rodriguez stood in the command center of the orbital station above. New Geneva, and watched the evacuation reports streaming across her screens. 3 years had passed since the rejection at Kepler Station, and humanity's withdrawal from galactic society was proceeding exactly as planned. Her job was to coordinate the systematic recall of every human citizen, worker, diplomat, and soldier from alien space. The process was methodical and peaceful. No demands were made, no ultimatums were given, and no explanations were offered beyond. Simple statements about pursuing other opportunities. Human merchants quietly closed their businesses and sold their assets to alien buyers at fair market prices. Human diplomats submitted their resignations and departed their posts without ceremony. Human workers completed their contracts and politely declined renewals. Engineer Pete Jackson led one of the largest withdrawal operations on the mining world. Of Kepler 442b, his teams had built most of the infrastructure that made the planet's mineral extraction profitable, designing systems that increased efficiency by 300% over previous alien methods. Now they were carefully dismantling everything they had created, leaving behind detailed documentation and training materials for the alien workers who would attempt to maintain the operations. Jackson uploaded the final technical specifications to the planetary database and turned to his Nexus Federation supervisor, a blue-skinned humanoid named Vexon. All human-designed systems have been documented completely. Your people should be able to maintain basic operations with the information we've provided. We've also trained your senior technicians on the primary maintenance protocols. Vexan looked confused and somewhat desperate. But Jackson, why are you leaving? The profits from this operation have made both our species wealthy. Your innovations have revolutionized our entire mining industry. Surely we can negotiate better terms. If compensation is the issue. Jackson shook his head calmly. Compensation was never the issue, Vexon. We were told by your galactic leadership that humans are best suited for manual labor. We're simply accepting that judgment and redirecting our efforts accordingly. Your people are perfectly capable of maintaining these systems without our involvement. Similar scenes played out across hundreds of worlds as human expertise quietly vanished from alien society. Administrator Kate Brooks oversaw the closure of human trading posts throughout the Rigel sector, operations that had been cornerstones of interstellar commerce for decades. When alien officials asked why humanity was abandoning such profitable ventures, she gave the same response every time. We're pursuing other opportunities that better align with our capabilities. The aliens initially celebrated the human departure. Chancellor Veltar issued a public statement declaring that the galaxy is finally free from human contamination and can proceed with proper civilized development. High Magistrate Kolvesh announced that this marked a new age of enlightened progress, unencumbered by primitive human interference. However, problems began appearing almost immediately. Lieutenant Noah Davis filed his final report from the Altarian Defense Academy, where he had served as a tactical advisor for 7 years. His specialty was adaptive formation fighting, a revolutionary approach to space combat that had given alien fleets decisive advantages against pirate raids and hostile incursions. The techniques seemed simple when he taught them, but alien commanders quickly discovered that implementing them without human guidance was far more difficult than expected. Admiral Quindle of the Altarian fleet sent multiple messages requesting Davis to extend his assignment, offering increasingly generous compensation packages. Davis politely declined each offer, explaining that he had been reassigned to operations more suitable for his species. Within 6 months of his departure, Altarian forces suffered their first major defeat in over a decade when pirates exploited tactical weaknesses that Davis would have easily countered. Dr. Rachel Stone led the exodus of human scientists from the Galactic Research Consortium. Her teams had been instrumental in breakthrough discoveries across multiple fields, from quantum mechanics to dark matter manipulation. Their research had formed the foundation for numerous technological advances that alien civilizations had adopted as their own achievements. Now, the humans packed their data and equipment with the same quiet efficiency they showed in everything else. The director of the consortium, a crystalline being named Mother, attempted to negotiate with Stone directly. Dr. Stone, your research is on the verge of revolutionary breakthroughs. The quantum tunneling project alone could transform galactic transportation. Surely, you cannot abandon such important work. Stone sealed the last of her data containers and looked at Mother with patient eyes. The Galactic Council made it clear that human contributions to advanced science are minimal at best. We're simply accepting that assessment and focusing our research efforts where they might be more appreciated. I'm sure your people will make excellent progress without our primitive interference. The loss of human scientific expertise created immediate problems for the consortium. Research projects that had been progressing smoothly for years suddenly stalled when the humans who understood the underlying principles were no longer available. Alien scientists discovered that they had been relying on human insights and innovations far more than they had realized. Captain Hughes, now promoted to admiral, oversaw the final phase of the withdrawal. All human military assets were recalled from joint operations and cooperative agreements. The Earth Defense Fleet disappeared beyond the outer rim of known space, taking with them not just their ships and personnel, but all records of human tactical doctrine and strategic knowledge. The military withdrawal had the most immediate impact on galactic security. Human advisors had been quietly integrated into alien defense forces for decades, their tactical innovations and strategic thinking proving decisive in countless conflicts. The void swarm incursions that had plagued the outer sectors for years had been successfully contained largely due to human tactical contributions, though the aliens had never acknowledged this fact. Without human military expertise, alien forces began suffering increased casualties and strategic failures. The predictive engagement patterns that humans had developed allowed alien commanders to anticipate enemy movements and counter them effectively. The psychological warfare techniques that humans had introduced helped demoralize hostile forces and reduce the duration of conflicts. All of this knowledge departed with the human withdrawal, leaving alien militaries struggling with outdated doctrines and ineffective strategies. Trade Administrator Vexon, the same being who had questioned Jackson on Kepler 442b, began noticing severe problems with interstellar commerce. Human logistics algorithms had optimized trade routes throughout the galaxy, reducing shipping costs and delivery times while maximizing cargo efficiency. The careful mathematical models that humans had developed took into account hundreds of variables that alien traders had never considered important. Without human logistics expertise, shipping costs began rising dramatically. Delivery schedules became unreliable as alien traders discovered that their traditional routes were far less efficient than they had believed. The carefully balanced galactic economy that had grown around human innovations started showing stress fractures as basic commercial operations became more expensive and less dependable. Meanwhile, deep space monitoring stations began detecting strange energy signatures from beyond the galactic rim. Long-range sensors picked up evidence of massive industrial activity in regions that had previously shown no signs of civilization. The energy outputs suggested construction projects on a scale that dwarfed anything in recorded galactic history. But all attempts to investigate were met with impenetrable defensive fields. Some younger alien leaders began questioning the wisdom of humanity's dismissal. Sub-Commander Tara of the Nexus Fleet had worked closely with human advisors and understood their value better than her superiors. She submitted reports highlighting the declining effectiveness of alien operations since the human departure. But older leadership dismissed her concerns. Humans were primitive, insisted Chancellor Veltar when presented with evidence of deteriorating galactic conditions. Whatever problems we face now are temporary adjustments to proper civilized management. We will adapt and improve without relying on inferior human methods. The mysterious activities detected beyond the rim continued to intensify, but alien. Leadership refused to consider that humans might be responsible. The beings they had dismissed as barely evolved creatures could not possibly be conducting operations of such magnitude and sophistication. As the third year of human withdrawal concluded, the galactic community found itself increasingly unstable. Economic systems strained under inefficient management, military effectiveness declined without human tactical support, and scientific progress slowed dramatically without human innovation. Yet pride prevented most alien leaders from acknowledging their growing need for the species they had so confidently rejected. The humans had kept their word completely. They had withdrawn quietly and peacefully, without protest or retaliation. 30 years had passed since the last human ship departed from known galactic space, and the silence was absolute. No human vessel had entered established trade routes. No human signal had been detected by communication arrays, and no human representative had responded to the increasingly desperate messages sent toward the outer rim. Trade Administrator Vexan stared at the shipping reports on his desk and tried to understand how everything had gone so wrong. The hegemony's interstellar commerce had collapsed into chaos. Without human logistics algorithms, trade routes that had operated smoothly for decades now suffered constant delays and cost overruns. Ships arrived at destinations to find no available docking facilities because the complex scheduling systems that humans had designed were no longer being maintained properly. Cargo loads that had been perfectly balanced using human mathematical models now caused structural stress on vessels, leading to increased accidents and insurance claims. Vexan had tried to recreate the human systems using his own people's expertise, but every attempt failed. The algorithms that humans had developed seemed simple on the surface, but they incorporated variables and calculations that alien minds struggled to understand. The humans had considered factors that other species never thought important, creating optimization patterns that worked perfectly, but could not be replicated without the original designers. His assistant, a young hegemony engineer named Colonet, entered the office with another stack of failure reports. Sir, the Rigel Sector Shipping Collective has declared bankruptcy. Without human route optimization, their fuel costs increased by 400%, and their delivery reliability dropped to 30%. Their clients have terminated all contracts. Vexan rubbed his temples and nodded wearily. The same story was repeating throughout galactic space. Human innovations had become so integrated into alien society that their absence created cascading failures across every industry and institution. Military strategist Quindle faced even more severe problems with the Altarian Defense Forces. The tactical doctrines that had kept their space secure for decades were crumbling without human expertise. The adaptive formation fighting techniques that Lieutenant Davis had taught were impossible to implement properly without understanding the underlying principles that humans had never fully explained. Admiral, we lost another patrol squadron to the Outer Rim pirates, reported Captain Velinash, his voice heavy with frustration. They used the same basic ambush tactics that we've countered successfully for 20 years, but our response formations fell apart under pressure. The crews don't understand why the maneuvers work. They only know the patterns that humans showed them. Quindle studied the tactical displays showing the locations of recent defeats. The pirates had not become more sophisticated or better equipped. If anything, they were using older strategies that should have been easy to counter. The problem was that alien commanders had become dependent on human strategic thinking without realizing it. What about the predictive engagement software that the humans developed? Asked Quindle. Velinash shook his head. We have the programs, but they require constant updates and calibrations that only humans knew how to perform. The software produces random results now because it was designed around human understanding of psychological warfare and enemy behavior. Patterns. Without that knowledge, it's useless. The void swarm incursions that had been successfully contained for decades were growing more frequent and successful. The containment strategies that humans had developed relied on complex timing and coordination that alien forces could not maintain. Each defeat weakened galactic defenses further and emboldened the hostile forces that had been kept in check by human tactical innovations. Scientific Director Mather of the Crystalline Collective discovered that the research consortium's problems were even more fundamental than anyone had imagined. A detailed analysis of their recent publications revealed that nearly 60% of galactic technological advancement over the past 50 years had been based on human research and innovations. The quantum tunneling project that Dr. Stone had been leading was completely stalled. Alien scientists could follow the mathematical formulas that humans had developed, but they could not understand the intuitive leaps and creative insights that had made the breakthroughs possible. The dark matter manipulation experiments that had been on the verge of success were abandoned because no one could comprehend the theoretical framework that humans had constructed. Director, we need to face the reality of our situation, said senior researcher Kolmish during their weekly progress meeting. Human scientists didn't just contribute to our research. They were the foundation of our research. They guided our thinking and provided the innovative concepts that drove our discoveries. Without them, we're reduced to studying and copying technologies that we don't truly understand. Mather's crystalline form pulsed with what other species would recognize as embarrassment. How did we fail to notice their importance? Their contributions seemed so natural and obvious that we assumed any advanced species could replicate them. The truth was becoming clear across every field of galactic civilization. Humans had not been primitive contributors to advanced society. They had been the primary drivers of advancement, innovation, and stability. Their methods had seemed simple because they had the ability to find elegant solutions to complex problems. Their technologies had appeared basic because they focused on functionality rather than impressive displays. Meanwhile, deep space monitoring stations were detecting increasingly sophisticated activities beyond the galactic rim. The energy signatures suggested construction projects that operated on scales beyond anything in recorded history. Massive structures were being built in the darkness between stars, using technologies that produced power outputs equivalent to entire star systems. Long-range sensors detected evidence of industrial complexes that spanned light years. Transportation. Networks that moved materials at velocities approaching the speed of light, and defensive systems that could deflect or absorb any scanning attempts. The technology being deployed was centuries beyond anything that galactic civilization had achieved. Sub-Commander Terra, now promoted to Fleet Admiral after a series of military disasters had eliminated her superiors, was one of the few alien leaders who suspected the truth. She had worked closely with human advisors before the withdrawal and understood their capabilities better than most. Her reports to the Nexus High Command were consistently ignored, but she continued documenting the evidence. The energy signatures match theoretical models for matter-energy conversion systems that human scientists were researching 30 years ago, her report stated. The construction patterns suggest organizational methodologies that are consistent with human engineering principles. The defensive systems respond to our scanning attempts in ways that indicate familiarity with our sensor technologies and capabilities. Admiral, Terra's superiors dismissed her theories as impossible. The humans were primitive miners and laborers, insisted High Admiral Vextal. They possessed no advanced technologies and demonstrated no sophisticated engineering capabilities. Whatever civilization is responsible for these activities, it cannot be human. The galactic economy continued its steady decline as systems designed by humans failed one by one. Trade relationships that had existed for centuries dissolved when delivery schedules became unreliable and costs became prohibitive. Scientific progress ground to a halt as research projects stalled without human innovation to drive them forward. Military effectiveness decreased monthly as tactical doctrines developed with human expertise proved impossible to maintain. Some alien governments attempted to send expeditions beyond the galactic rim to investigate the mysterious activities. But every probe and scout ship that ventured into those regions simply disappeared. No distress signals were received, no wreckage was ever found, and no survivors returned to report what they had encountered. The defensive systems protecting human space were absolute and impenetrable. Chancellor Veltar, now facing the collapse of several Zephyrian colony worlds due to failed infrastructure, finally authorized a galaxy-wide communication attempt directed toward human space. The message was brief and formal, requesting diplomatic contact to discuss mutual concerns and opportunities for cooperation. The transmission was sent using the most powerful communication arrays in galactic space, BROADCAST, across all known frequencies and repeated continuously for months. The response was absolute silence. If humans were listening, they chose not to acknowledge alien attempts at communication. Dr. Ulax, the galaxy's leading theoretical physicist, spent years analyzing the energy signatures detected from beyond the rim. Her conclusions were disturbing and humbling. The technology being used operated on principles that violated everything galactic science understood about physics and engineering. The power sources appeared to manipulate matter and energy at the quantum level, suggesting scientific advancement. That was centuries beyond galactic capabilities. Whatever civilization has developed these technologies, her report concluded, they have transcended the limitations that constrain all known galactic species. Fleet Admiral Zorith stood on the bridge of the combined galactic armada and watched his forces crumble before the advancing void swarm invasion. 40 years had passed since humanity's departure, and the galaxy now faced its greatest crisis. Without the strategic expertise that had once protected them, the void swarm had returned from dark space with forces more advanced and numerous than any previous incursion, and traditional alien defenses were proving utterly inadequate. The invasion had begun 6 months earlier with coordinated strikes against outer rim colonies. Within weeks, the hegemony had lost 3 core worlds, their populations either destroyed or absorbed into the swarm's collective consciousness. The Altarian defense grid, once considered the most sophisticated military installation in known space, had fallen in less than 72 hours despite having defensive capabilities that should have held for months. Zorith's tactical displays showed the grim reality of their situation. The alien fleet represented the combined military might of every galactic civilization, yet they were being systematically destroyed by an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. The adaptive formation fighting techniques that humans had developed were no longer being implemented correctly, and the predictive engagement patterns that had once given alien forces decisive advantages were failing completely. "Admiral, we've lost contact with Battle Group Sigma," reported his communications officer, a crystalline collective being whose energy form flickered with stress. Their last transmission indicated complete tactical formation breakdown before being overrun. The defeat was following the same pattern that had destroyed dozens of alien fleets. Without human strategic guidance, alien commanders fell back on traditional tactics that the Void Swarm had learned to counter decades ago. The psychological warfare techniques that humans had introduced were forgotten. The adaptive response protocols were implemented incorrectly, and the coordination between different species forces was chaotic. Chancellor Veltar, now aboard the flagship as a military advisor, watched the destruction with growing desperation. His Zephyrian crystalline form had lost much of its luster in recent years, as the failures of galactic civilization became impossible to ignore. The confident leader who had dismissed humanity as primitive was now facing the collapse of everything he had claimed to protect. "Admiral Zorith, we must consider alternative options," Galtar said quietly. "Our conventional military responses are ineffective. Perhaps it is time to acknowledge that we require assistance we previously rejected." High Magistrate Kolvesh, also present on the command bridge, pulsed with what could only be described as shame. "You suggest we contact the humans? After 4 decades of silence? After we dismissed them as barely evolved creatures suitable only for manual labor?" The debate was interrupted by urgent alerts from the sensor array. The Void Swarm was launching another massive assault, this time directed at the galactic core. Systems. If these worlds fell, galactic civilization would effectively cease to exist. Billions of lives hung in the balance, and alien leadership had no effective response to offer. Zoreth made the decision that 40 years of pride had prevented. Open all communication channels. Broadcast on every frequency we can generate. Send the message to every region of space where humans might be listening. The galaxy-wide transmission was simple and direct. To any human vessels or installations that might receive this communication, we were wrong. We acknowledge our error in judgment and our desperate need for assistance. The galaxy faces extinction without your help. Please respond if you can. Hear this message. The plea was repeated continuously across all known frequencies, transmitted by every communication array in galactic space. Hours passed, then days, with no response. The Void Swarm continued its advance, and alien resistance continued to crumble. Hope began to fade as the silence stretched on. Then something impossible happened. In the middle of the largest Void Swarm assault formation, massive energy discharges began appearing without warning. Entire swarm fleets simply vanished in brilliant flashes of light that left no wreckage behind. The attacking forces were not being destroyed in any conventional sense. They were being completely erased from existence. Dr. Yalax monitored the phenomenon from her research station and tried to understand what she was witnessing. The energy signatures were unlike anything in her databases, operating on principles that seemed to violate fundamental laws of physics. The weapons being used appeared to manipulate reality itself at the quantum level, suggesting technological development that was centuries beyond galactic capabilities. Director, the energy patterns are consistent with theoretical matter-energy conversion on a massive scale, reported her assistant, a young physicist named Cole Run. But the power requirements for such weapons would exceed the output of entire star systems. No known civilization possesses such capabilities. The mysterious intervention continued throughout the combat zones. Void swarm formations that had been devastating alien defenses were eliminated with surgical precision by invisible attackers. The enemy forces that had seemed invincible just hours before were being systematically destroyed by weapons they could not detect or counter. Admiral Zorith watched the tactical displays with amazement and growing understanding. The energy signatures were familiar somehow, though he could not immediately identify why. The precision of the attacks and the efficiency of the targeting suggested tactical thinking that reminded him of something from decades past. "Admiral, I'm detecting massive structural distortions in local space-time," announced the sensor officer. "Something is manipulating gravitational fields on a scale that should be impossible. The readings suggest the presence of artificial constructs that are larger than major space stations, but completely invisible to our detection systems." Fleet Admiral Terra, commanding the Nexus Defense Forces from her own vessel, recognized the tactical patterns immediately. She had worked with human military advisors before their departure and understood their strategic thinking better than any other alien commander. The invisible attackers were using modified versions of human tactical doctrines, implemented with technology that transcended every limitation that had constrained galactic warfare. "All ships, this is Admiral Tira," she broadcast to the combined fleet. "The forces engaging the Void Swarm are using tactical methodologies that were developed by human military advisors 40 years ago. The strategic patterns are unmistakable, though the technology being employed is far beyond anything we believed humans possessed." Her words sent shock waves through the alien command structure. The possibility that humans were responsible for the mysterious intervention challenged every assumption that galactic leadership had held for 4 decades. Within 6 months, the entire Void Swarm invasion force had been eliminated. The invisible human fleet struck with impossible precision and overwhelming firepower, erasing enemy formations before they could respond or adapt. The technology being used operated beyond the boundaries of known physics, suggesting that humanity had achieved mastery over fundamental forces that galactic science barely understood. After the last Void Swarm vessel was destroyed, long-range sensors detected brief energy signatures moving away from galactic space toward the outer rim. The human forces that had saved galactic civilization departed as silently as they had arrived, leaving behind no trace of their presence except the complete absence of the enemy that had threatened to destroy everything. High Magistrate Kolvesh spent days reviewing sensor data and tactical recordings, trying to comprehend what he had witnessed. The humans who had been dismissed as primitive 40 years earlier had become something that transcended every limitation of known civilization. Their technology operated on principles that violated established physics. Their military capabilities exceeded anything in galactic history, and their tactical sophistication had evolved far beyond the teachings they had once shared with alien forces. "We called them primitive," Kolvesh said quietly during an emergency council session. "We dismissed them as barely evolved creatures suitable only for manual labor. We were not just wrong. We were blind to capabilities that we could not even comprehend." Chancellor Veltar sat in stunned silence as the implications became clear. The beings they had rejected had been operating far below their actual capabilities, restraining themselves to avoid overwhelming less advanced species. Every innovation that humans had shared with galactic civilization had been a carefully measured gift, designed to help alien development without revealing the true extent of human potential. Dr. Yilax submitted her final analysis of the energy signatures detected during the intervention. "The technology employed by the human forces operates on principles of matter-energy manipulation that are centuries beyond our current understanding. They have achieved direct control over quantum fields, allowing them to alter the fundamental properties of spacetime itself. In comparison to their actual capabilities, every galactic civilization should be classified as primitive." The galaxy that had once confidently dismissed humanity now struggled to process the reality of what humans had become. 25 years had passed since the Void Swarm's defeat, and the galaxy existed in a state of profound shame and decline. Former Chancellor Veltar sat alone in his private study on the abandoned world of Kepler Station, surrounded by archives and historical records that told the story of galactic civilization's greatest mistake. His crystalline form had dimmed considerably over the years, reflecting the weight of guilt that had consumed him since learning the truth about humanity. Records spread across his desk painted a devastating picture of alien arrogance and human patience. Every diplomatic interaction, every technological exchange, and every strategic consultation from the past century revealed the same pattern. Humans had been guiding galactic development with subtle wisdom, offering innovations and solutions that seemed simple, but were actually the products of minds operating far beyond alien comprehension. Veltar studied a recording from 50 years earlier, showing Dr. Stone presenting research findings to the Galactic Science Consortium. At the time, her proposals had seemed obvious and straightforward. Now, With the benefit of hindsight and detailed analysis, he could see the elegant complexity hidden beneath her simple explanations. She had been teaching advanced concepts to species who thought they were her intellectual equals, carefully packaging revolutionary insights in forms that alien minds could accept and implement. The same pattern appeared in every field where humans had participated. Their mining efficiency improvements had not been simple mechanical innovations, but sophisticated applications of physics and chemistry that alien engineers still could not fully understand. Their trade route optimizations had incorporated mathematical models that took into account variables that other species had never considered relevant. Their military tactics had been based on psychological and strategic insights that transcended traditional concepts of warfare. They were teaching children, Veltar whispered to himself, his voice echoing in the empty chamber. We were children playing with toys, and they were patiently showing us how to use them without revealing that they could have built cities while we struggled with blocks. The galactic community had never recovered from the revelation of human capabilities. Most member civilizations had collapsed into internal reflection and regret, their governments unable to function under the weight of understanding their collective failure. Trade routes remained disrupted, scientific progress had virtually ceased, and military effectiveness continued to decline as alien species struggled to maintain systems they had never truly understood. The galactic council chambers stood empty, their massive halls echoing with silence instead of debate. The building had been maintained by automated systems, but no delegates had gathered there for over a decade. The institution that had once confidently rejected humanity's petition for membership had become a monument to arrogance and short-sightedness. Admiral Terra, now Supreme Admiral of what remained of the combined galactic fleet, had devoted her remaining years to documenting human contributions to galactic civilization. Her research had revealed the staggering extent of human influence on every aspect of alien society. The technologies that aliens had claimed as their own achievements were largely based on human innovations. The strategic doctrines that had protected galactic space were products of human military thinking. The economic systems that had generated prosperity were built on human organizational principles. Every aspect of our civilization for the past century has been shaped by human guidance, she reported to the few remaining government officials who still maintained their positions. They were not participants in our society. They were the architects of our society. We built our achievements on foundations that they provided, then claimed credit for the construction while dismissing the architects as primitive laborers. Some alien species had attempted to rebuild using archived human innovations, but their efforts consistently failed. The elegant solutions that humans had developed required understanding of underlying principles that alien minds struggled to grasp. Without the intuitive insights that had made human innovations possible, alien attempts to recreate human achievements produced crude imitations that functioned poorly and failed frequently. The younger generation of aliens, led by beings like Admiral Terra, established the Human Heritage Foundation in a desperate attempt to preserve and study human contributions to galactic knowledge. They collected every available record of human scientific research, military strategy, and technological development, hoping to understand how such remarkable achievements had been possible. Dr. Kolvesh, now the senior researcher at the Foundation, spent his days analyzing human scientific papers and trying to comprehend the thought processes that had produced such revolutionary insights. Their research methodology was completely different from ours, he explained to his colleagues. They approached problems from angles that we never considered, using creative leaps and intuitive connections that produced solutions we could never have imagined. The Foundation's work revealed that humans had been operating with deliberate restraint throughout their time in galactic society. Every technology they had shared had been carefully limited to avoid overwhelming alien development. Every strategic innovation they had introduced had been scaled to match alien capabilities rather than human potential. They had been like adults, playing games with children, always holding back to maintain the illusion that the competition was fair. Meanwhile, deep space monitoring continued to detect evidence of massive human activity beyond the galactic rim. The energy signatures suggested construction projects that spanned multiple star systems, transportation networks that operated at velocities approaching the speed of light, and industrial complexes that processed matter on planetary scales. The technology being employed was advancing at rates that outpaced alien ability to understand or analyze it. Automated probes occasionally appeared at the galaxy's edge, conducting detailed scans before disappearing without responding to communication. Attempts. The probes used detection systems that were far more sophisticated than anything in galactic space, and their construction incorporated materials and design principles that alien science could not identify. They were clearly human in origin, evidence that humanity was monitoring galactic space while maintaining their self-imposed isolation. Dr. Yilix, now elderly and working alone in her research facility, had devoted her remaining years to analyzing the probe data and energy signatures from human space. Her conclusions were both fascinating and humbling. Human technology has advanced beyond our ability to comprehend it, her final report stated. They have achieved direct manipulation of spacetime, matter-energy conversion efficiency approaching theoretical limits, and computational capabilities that exceed the processing power of our entire galactic network. They are no longer bound by the physical limitations that constrain known civilizations. The mystery of human silence remained absolute despite decades of attempted communication. Every alien government had sent diplomatic missions toward human space, offering apologies, reparations, and desperate pleas for reconciliation. None had received responses. The humans were clearly aware of galactic conditions and alien attempts at contact, but they chose to maintain the isolation that alien arrogance had forced upon them. Former High Magistrate Kolvesh spent his final years writing detailed analyses of the galactic community's failure, hoping that future generations might learn from their mistakes. His writings documented the systematic dismissal of human contributions, the arrogant assumptions about human capabilities, and the catastrophic consequences of driving away the species that had been guiding galactic development. We were offered partnership with beings who possessed wisdom and capabilities far beyond our understanding. His final memoir concluded. Instead of recognizing the gift we had been given, we demanded that they prove their worth according to our limited standards. When they chose dignity over degradation, we celebrated our freedom from their influence. We did not understand that we were celebrating our own diminishment. On a forgotten world in the outer territories, an archaeological expedition discovered an ancient human monument that had been overlooked during the systematic withdrawal 65 years earlier. The inscription was written in multiple languages, including ancient human script that few aliens could still read. When translated, the message carried devastating weight for those who understood its implications. We came in friendship, offered knowledge freely, and sought only acceptance among the stars. When you chose pride over wisdom, we chose dignity over desperation. The galaxy was given a choice, and you made it. We respect that choice. The monument's discovery was reported throughout what remained of galactic civilization, serving as a final reminder of the opportunity that had been lost through arrogance and prejudice. The simple words carried more impact than any weapon could have delivered, striking directly at the heart of galactic shame and regret. Yet even in their darkest period of reflection, some aliens maintained hope for eventual reconciliation.